Thank you for stopping by. Welcome, welcome. My name is Jason, and this is the Outstanding Life Show. Here we talk about everything related to mindfulness. We talk about recovery. We talk about addiction. We talk about resilience. It's become a little bit of a buzzword lately. If you're new here, let me know. Put a comment. Put the hearts. Put the stars. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you're new here, if you're a returning visitor, that is awesome. Thank you for coming back. If you're not sure what we're doing, I've taken up a challenge where I'm trying out something new every day for this month. And it's really pushing my comfort zone, is really pushing me to explore new I want to say new faucets, new approaches to the content delivery. I've been working on my video, and I've decided to shift some focus, some of that energy, and put it into the audio. So I'm capturing this, and it's in the video format. It's being streamed out right now. I've got that being sent to both Facebook and YouTube, and then I'm also capturing the audio through my iPhone. It's been an adventure. Every day I'm trying something new. Every day I'm learning. I'm open to growth. I'm open to feedback. And I'm really curious as to what your thoughts are, if this is something you're enjoying. We've been taking different topics as the days have gone on. We've started out with, we had a deep topic about survivor's guilt. If you were here with us a couple of days ago, we talked about how the updates of 2020 have translated to this show, and I've shared some of the ideas as to where I want this show to go and how I want to elevate this and share this message out there. As I've moved some of my content from the video format to the audio format, one thing I've learned in the past few days is the digital assistants out there, the smart assistants, if you will, they do some caching and they do some reading of what's been sent to them. And in the podcast service I'm using is podcast.co. And those guys, they help me distribute the podcast in quite a few different areas. And one of them is the smart assistants. And when I go back and I look at the stats for downloads, the smart assistants are right up there when it comes to the fetching the data. And I never in a million years thought that this would be something that takes place. I never thought the smart assistants would be consuming content. I never thought that they were that smart, to be honest. But I'm learning something new every day. And as I'm challenging where my comfort level is, and as I'm challenging my ability to produce content in more than one way, I'm also trying out this new to me service where I'm using these nicer cameras, nicer microphones. It's something that I wouldn't normally have done. It's something I've been dabbling in over the past, I would say, 8 months now. And the world has definitely fallen apart and gone in a million different directions in the past 8 months. So I haven't really been using it. I haven't really been pushing myself to get the content out there. And there's this community that I found, and they've taken on the National Podcast Month. And they are putting out content every day. Every day. And it's not something like it's a live video where I can flip it on and hit record. And so I'm doing an audio version of this. And it's exciting. It's thrilling because I know enough that I can do it, but I don't know enough on how to master it. And I don't know enough. Even in the past few days, I've learned a lot in how audio works, and I'm post-processing and how to do the file uploads and these things that I think were so foreign to me. I'm now becoming more comfortable with it a week in, or almost a week in. So I'm pretty excited. I'm learning a lot. I'm having fun. I'm challenging myself. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. But that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm up to. That's where I'm working towards. So that's what's happened this week as a quick recap. challenging myself. I've got a month ahead of me, and I'm hoping you're here along for the ride. I'm really enjoying sharing this, and I hope you're enjoying consuming it. If you are, let me know. There's a couple of you that have reached out to me through private messenger, and I think that's awesome. Someone shared some comments about, I think it was, there was like revelations about, it was kind of funny where they were sharing this idea about when we go to meetings, when we're in active recovery, when we're, I almost want to call it sober curious, where we're entertaining the idea that sobriety could be a part of our lives. Either we're committed to recovery, or we're interested in recovery, or we're trying to push our comfort zones to now include recovery. And we might hear a message. We might hear the same, I don't want to call it the same stories, but when I'll just share a personal story before I jump into what someone shared with me, where I would go to these in rehab when 8 years ago, I was in rehab, and part of the exercises we would have to go through was going to meetings. And that's ideal, right? Like you go to meetings. That's kind of common in the recovery world. But when you go to a meeting in the morning, we would call it morning meditation. And then you'd have a meeting it's almost like school. You'd go to like recovery class. You'd go to, you'd have like homework and that kind of stuff. And then after that, you'd have lunch and you go back for more courses. Then you go back to dinner. And before dinner, you would have an afternoon meeting. And then after dinner, you would have an off-site meeting. So right away, that's at least 3 to 4 different meetings in a day. And in the off-site meeting, you'd have to leave the treatment center and head out into the wild, into the wilderness, and you'd have to go and hit up a meeting. And there was this big, like whiteout board. There's this big whiteboard, and it's like a big XY matrix where it has the 50 different guys in the treatment center. And then the Y matrix was all the different meetings that you could go to, like all the possible different meetings and in combinations. And the rule was you couldn't go to the same meeting twice in the same week. And the different locations can have quite a few different meetings. And when you look at all the combinations in the city that I live in Calgary, there's over 400 meetings in a week, which is bonanza. That's like 400 meetings. And now, if you can't go to the same meeting twice, that sounds like an easy objective. That sounds like doable. That sounds like you could achieve that. But then you have to like physically go there. And sometimes it's a little hard to get to different places, especially if you don't have a car or if you're on transit, or if the recovery van, we had a van, if the recovery van had all the seats and they were all full, because there's 50 guys, not all 50 guys are going to fit in the recovery van. So there's a couple of vans. And then if the couple of vans were already spoken for or filled up, or if the recovery vans were going to meetings that you had already attended that week, well, then you can't go to the same meeting twice. So you have to find another meeting. And so sometimes you'll have scrambling, and sometimes you just take a meeting at wherever you can get. Sometimes you're just like, I have to hit a meeting and I have to go. And there's a lot of like rules and structure, and I don't want to call it obligation, but there's a lot of good habits that start to be formed while in recovery, while in treatment. And while for me, those habits are great to get into, there was some stressful moments. There was some touch and go where I didn't know what meeting I was going to attend, or I didn't know. There was this anxiety for me where this pressure would come on, where I would have to like anxiously plan out what my meetings were going to be before that would come, like before, and start to plot out in my week what I was going to do for meetings. And that was like an extra layer of stress. So it's meant to be helpful and healthy, but there's a certain anxiousness that comes from it, because there was this fear about if you don't do these things, you may not make it through the program, which is a scary thought. And that, the whole point of being there is that you do complete the program. So what I'm getting to is, with all these different meetings, sometimes I would find myself at the most random meeting. There's the meetings that are, if you don't know, like if you're new to the whole idea about the meeting structure or what meetings are about, the whole crux of the matter is that it's a sense of community. It's a sense of, I want to call it fellowship is the key word. It's not like the Lord of the Rings fellowship, but it's more of camaraderie. It's more of, there's more people out there other than just you, and that it's a chance for you to relate to somebody. It's a chance for you to connect with somebody who's also going through the same thing. And when you're in a room together, it doesn't matter if it's 200 people, if it's 20 people, or if it's just 4. I've been in meetings with all 3 of those where when it's a room of 200, it's hard to find that sense of individual connection when there's 200 people. But then in a meeting where there's 4, there's a different kind of bonus, and there's also a different kind of takeaway. But in these different kinds of meetings, if you're not able to pick and choose and you just have to grab a meeting just to be able to have it under your belt, one of the things that I found challenging was 1, planning it out, and then 2, getting there, and then 3, I would have to focus on just being present in the meeting, not stressing out, not worrying about anything. I needed to be present for that meeting, for my healing to take place, for my cathartic, I don't want to call it exposure, but in preparation of opening up my emotions, in preparation of communicating and being honest with myself, being honest with other people, because that's in the world of recovery. One person who's an addict and in recovery, they can spot another person who is 98% being honest, because I have been in the same position where I'm being 90% honest with myself and 98% honest with someone else. And I'm in a meeting and I'm 98% sharing as a result of those 98%. And then another person in the meeting, we can have that sense of, I don't want to call it accountability, but we're open to the idea of being honest with each other. And this is where having a sponsor can be a huge win. This is where somebody that's clear cut, they've been through the program, they've been through the ringer, they've seen a whole bunch of BS in their time, and they don't put up with it. So when I roll in with my 98% commitment, they are quick to call out that 2% and then hold that 2% accountable, and they zone in on it. And that level of commitment and connection doesn't come from just, I don't want to call it armchair recovery or couch potato recovery where I'm not doing any of those things. It's hard to get that sense of accountability without having a community. It's hard to get that sense of commitment or partner, coach almost, if you don't have that sense of community, if you're not going to meet. So in these meetings, you often go to them, I don't want to say because of the community, but what makes everybody go to a meeting is not the same thing that gets people to stay. What makes people stay is the message. What makes people stay is that connection, that community. But what makes people go to the meeting is that they have that addiction. They have that sense of reaching out. And when I went to the meetings in the beginning, I didn't have a sense of I don't want to call it foundation, but I would say I didn't have a clear definition in my head about who a higher power is in my world. I didn't have a sense of I don't want to call it community, but I didn't really have a sense of connection with another person, primarily because I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't being, there were other things I was holding as a higher priority than my higher power. I was holding my ego at such a high pedestal that it took forever for me to knock it down and to make room for a higher power. So part of the reason why I didn't have a higher power is I had a different priority. I had different focus. And I was chatting with my friend earlier today, and then she was talking about focus. And when her focus wasn't on finding that higher power, it's not that you don't find it. It's that I haven't given myself, in yesterday's episode, we talked about empathy, having empathy for ourselves, having that sense of forgiveness, having that sense of flexibility in our approach. If the only thing I ever do is hold this idea about what recovery is, and the only way I'm ever going to go out and get recovery is checking off a box on a whiteboard, and then I do that 7 days a week, and that equals recovery, well, that really doesn't mean anything if I haven't been honest with myself and been honest with others and genuinely connected with somebody else, genuinely connected with a group, shared my story, shared my thoughts. That level of consistency, as a result of those things, as a result of those steps, as a result of that program, that is where the recovery comes in. It doesn't come from I don't want to say from the community itself. The community itself is definitely a huge asset to it. There's different communities for everything. There's a 12 steps for AA. That's the most popular one, but there's also one for NA. That's Narcotics Anonymous. There's CA, Codependency Anonymous. Even when I was a kid, hold on, I'm just going back now. I remember when I was a kid, there was Al-Anon, ALANON, Al-Anon, and then there was one below that, Al-Tots, TOTS, and that's for kids. And now you're probably asking yourself, why would a kid go to a meeting? Well, it wasn't because the kid was in recovery. That sounds weird, but it's because that child was in a family environment where somebody did have a problem with addiction, with alcohol. And so there's support programs around people who support. Like there's a program for everything, and there's meetings for everything, and there's a community for everything. So when I started going to these meetings, I would show up at that 98% commitment level, and I would show up with that idea of, if I go to these meetings and check off these boxes, I will get through and I will find recovery, as if it's going to show up one day and I'm going to put it in my pocket and I'm going to go home with it. I wish recovery worked like that. I really do, but I know in my heart of hearts it doesn't. I know that there's more out there for me to do. I know there's more out there for me to commit to. And when you go to, 4 or 5 meetings in a day for 9 weeks, who I was at the beginning of those meetings wasn't the same person as I was at the end of those 200 plus meetings. By the time I finished those 200 plus meetings, I wasn't done my meetings. No, it's not like you only go to meetings while in rehab. No. But it's the exercise of going through. It's getting that habit being built about, okay, I need to check my ego at the door. I need to be honest with myself and be honest with others. I need to stay true to my moral compass. And I need to find my higher power. And what was my higher power at the beginning was the group, the community. And that really, truly helped me get to the point where I am now. That helped elevate me to the point where I do have a higher power now. It's not the group, but I ended up finding it because of the program, because of the steps, because of the community, because of my sponsor. And these were all cathartic healing steps. I say that now, looking back, but at the time, these were the most challenging things. when I was in rehab, they had these goals. They had these like, by this week you had to do this. By the X week you would have had to have done your step 1, and by week 4 you have your step 4 done. And there was other things too, like each week you had to make friends with one of the counselors in the treatment center, and then each week you would get the sign off approval from that counselor. Then you could elevate to the second step, and then you go on to the second counselor and you elevate to the third one, and then and like every week there's a whole new thing on top of the other things you got to do. So it's a pressure cooker. It's like a stress ball on a stress ball on a stress ball. And these things can get out of hand. Thankfully, you're in a safe place. Thankfully, you're in a place where you're given the tools and you're given the support system. You're given the opportunity to speak and share, and you're given the opportunity to go to these meetings. When you open up to somebody and you're raw, when you're no longer 98% true to yourself and true to other people, when you're giving that 100%, when you're burning the lean fuel into the night, and it's the 11th hour and there you are, in those moments, we have the opportunity to grow and develop that resilience. And thanks to the empathy we've given ourselves and shown other people, that gives us the capacity to grow. So by removing the ego, by checking the ego at the door, by being honest with ourselves and other people, and then forming these new habits, I was able to then be in a position where I could then find my higher power. I could then move my sobriety into a point where I could be proud of being sober. I don't know if I told you guys, like there was a point where I didn't tell anybody that I was sober. Like I took vacation to go to rehab. And I planned it that way because I didn't want my friends and my family to know. And there's no vacation that's going to be 9 weeks long. That's crazy to think about, right? Like there's no vacations that's 9 weeks long, no. But vacations can be 2 weeks long. So I took 2 weeks vacation, and my hope was that everybody would forget me by the time I got to the third week. And nobody's going to come looking, nobody's going to come asking, and I'm just going to go to treatment and I'm going to come out of that and everything's going to be done. Everything's going to be fine. Well, that didn't work because my friends and family did come looking, and they were asking and double checking on me, and they were worried about me. And a lot of people were disappointed when I didn't share with them what was going on, and I wasn't being honest with myself and other people. Yes, I was reaching out for help, but I wasn't being open and honest about reaching out for help. I think maybe 2 people knew, 3 people knew where I was and what I was doing. And I slowly opened up to people as time went on, like as the 9 weeks went on. And one day when I was back at work, one day I was in my day job. I'm returned to work. I've got everything done, and my friends are there, and my coworkers are there, and people are smiling and laughing, and we're joking because we haven't seen each other in a while. And then people would lean in and give me a hug and be like, Jason, I haven't seen you in forever. It's really good to see you. I'm glad you're back. I'm like, that's awesome. And then one day somebody leaned in and they gave me a hug. And then they whispered into my ear and they said, don't worry, Jason. Your secret is safe with me. And then my heart dropped. My skin started to crawl, and I began to worry and doubt because there was only 2 or 3 people that knew where I was or what I was doing, that had gone to rehab, that had gotten help, that I had a problem. You know, I was very good at putting on a face. I was very good at putting on a show. and before recovery, before in the heat of my addiction. And now this, for other people to know, that tells me either somebody of those 2 or 3 people started to share and talk. And I didn't want to look at the list. I didn't want to go and find out. I didn't want to scrutinize who talked or who shared, and I didn't feel comfortable and I didn't feel safe. And I'd worked really hard on developing a program and getting friends and a support system and all these things. And this was not the way, this was not on my checklist. This was not on something that I was hoping to accomplish. And I didn't know what to do. And I panicked. And when you panic, you start making rash decisions. And I started to doubt. I didn't know how to approach the solution, and I didn't know. I no longer controlled the flow of information, and what I wanted to do was to not be in control. So I decided to go in the opposite direction. And what I mean by that is, rather than be tight-lipped about everything, rather than be doubtful about who knows what if I go in the opposite direction, and what if I just share everything? What if I just talked about my experience? What if I open up and I walk everybody through the entire process? What if I share what I'm going through from a minute-to-minute standpoint? What if I share what I'm going through and my struggles? What if I start blogging? What if I make a video? What if I do a live video? What if I make a podcast about this stuff? These are all things that are seemingly impossible. And if I can get 8 years clean and sober, then I can, I think I can do this. I think I can manage that. And so rather than be afraid and rather than be upset and rather than be angry, I went back to my community. I went back to my sponsor. I went back to my meetings. And then I shared, and I was like, you know what, guys? I've learned a lot. My journey's not over by any means. And I was like, but I don't feel comfortable in people not knowing, and some people knowing, and they think it's a dirty secret. So I'm going to turn around and I'm just going to share the entire experience, my entire experience, with what I know. And what I know isn't everything. It's just my perspective. And that was the beginning of, I started a Facebook page, and I called it Make Someone's Day. You just make someone's day. And on that Make Someone's Day page, I'm gonna post quotes. I'm gonna, those cheesy quotes with the words on the screen, and it's got the text in the background with an image, and that's me. I started posting those, and I would have a recovery focused, not cramming down your throat, like focused kind of a thing, but it's more of a pro recovery spin on quotes. And it was taking a mindful approach, and it was meant to be more of a hobby than anything. And so I started sharing that. And then it grew, and there was a lot of attention around it. And then I started just posting my celebration milestones, and people loved those, like hearing those. And people would share with me that they never knew that I struggled or had any issues. And I was like, well, in me sharing, my hope is that not that it inspires others, but I hope I can let others know that there's another way, that there's another approach, and it doesn't always have to be this way, and that there is a community out there of support. And the one thing that I was afraid of the most before all this was I was afraid of, what kind of person, who would love somebody that's an addict? Who is going to trust somebody that's an alcoholic? Who's gonna loan money and let me buy a car or buy a house? Or who's gonna, what bank is gonna trust me? I had all these weird ideas, and those fears drove me to the point where I didn't want to deal with that conversation. And that, just the fear alone, crippled me. Just that fear, just the doubt by itself, the introduction of that doubt stopped me from moving forward, from entertaining that there's another idea. Even though I wanted a better life, even though I wanted to change, I was more afraid of what my friends and family would think of me than I was willing to commit. It's a weird thing to say out loud now, but now I'm at a point in my life where I wish I had known that there was this support system in place long before, because it probably would have made a world of difference. But that's where this, I wanted to help normalize some of these conversations, is to let people know that, in the Outstanding Life show, we do have an approach about mental health. We do talk about addiction and recovery. We do have a community of our own. There's people that reach out to me and let me know what their thoughts are, what they enjoyed, or what they didn't like. And I love all the feedback. I love hearing from you guys, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out and be a part of this conversation. I'm really enjoying the process. It's a learning curve for me, but it's a journey, and it's a never-ending one. I never give up on recovery, and I'm always committed to recovery. And I know that it's not the same journey for everybody. And that was the conversation I was having earlier with my friend, when she was saying, Jason, I've been going to meetings for X number of years, and I had an aha moment at this one specific meeting because of the way someone said something. And maybe it was something she had heard before from other people, but it was the way this one person described it. And thanks to that one person, thanks to that meeting, that gave them the reassurance they need to let them know that their moral compass is facing north, that they're on the right path. And I think that's awesome. I don't know what your moral compass is or what north means for you, but I wanted to take a minute and celebrate that you're here. I want to take a minute and appreciate that you're a part of this community and that you're listening to this or you're watching the video. It really means a lot to me. You're a part of my moral compass. You're a part of my North Star. And I want to let you know that even though we don't see each other or chat with each other a lot, that I am here. And if you want to chat, I'm a part of this and I'm committed to following up. So thank you for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out and being cool. If you're watching the video, I've got a link on the screen, and it's the address bar. It's got sobriety.live/now. And there I've got a list of links, and it's got everything from best ways to get a hold of me if you're a Facebook person, or if you're a Messenger person, or if you're Instagram, or if you enjoy mental health and you need some support. There's a link there for 30 days of calm.com. It's just a free gift, and it's got no benefit to me. There's also Coursera courses. Those are really awesome because those are free courses, legit free, and those are free until the end of the year. And they've got everything from like mental health to helping getting a career started. It's really amazing what Coursera is offering now. I've been bettering myself through this pandemic by taking mental health courses and by sharpening my saw and connecting with you, my community. And one thing I wanted to do was to get this podcast up and running, get these videos out on a more regular basis. And so I'm challenging myself to go every day this month. It sounds bonanza, but it's been fun. It's only been 3 or 4 days, but I've learned a lot. And I'm eager to see what tomorrow brings. In the meantime, friends, if you're interested in these links, go check them out, sobriety.live/now. There's links to the podcast if you wanted to go listen to this, and there's links to the videos in case you want to go watch these. But in the meantime, my friends, you take care, you have fun, and I'll see you in another video or in another podcast episode.